Tuesday, April 28th, 2020. I know this because I just checked my phone before I put it up there on the camera holder, because I have a hard time remembering what day it is because of all this stuff that's going on right now. I'm used to having a schedule that I go by every day, looking at a schedule every day. I live by a schedule every day usually, but with the coronavirus thing that's going on, it's hard to remember what day it is, although I'm doing house calls on people. Not a lot of stuff, but I'm cutting hair at people's homes. I had one appointment today on a friend of mine, that guy I've known for many years. I think I started cutting his hair when I was around 19 or 20 years old. We were trying to figure out how many years we've known each other. I said, dude, well, let's pretend I started cutting your hair when I was 20. I said, I'm 48 now, so that's 28 years I've known you. And we're, wow, blown away about how much time has gone by since we've known each other. And I've been cutting his hair. And so I made a house call on him today because, of course, the salon I work at hasn't gotten the permission to be open yet, right? And so I'm doing what I can. Tomorrow I've got a couple appointments. The next day after that I do. If you guys want to hear something funny real quick, by the way, this is pretty hilarious, because the week before last, I was getting ready to go to Arizona. But before I went to Arizona, I drove out there. Before I went to Arizona, though, I had some haircuts lined up for me during the week. So one guy, I was supposed to be at his house on I think it was Thursday for a haircut, and then the next guy Friday for a haircut, and then Saturday I was going to leave. And what's funny is I thought it was on Wednesday. I thought Wednesday was Thursday. So I show up on my Thursday appointment on Wednesday to this guy's house, and I call him and I said, oh, hey, I'm here. And the funny thing, he didn't even question me on it and say, oh, wait, what are you doing here? I thought we had a haircut tomorrow. He's like, oh, yeah, that's right. I'll be right there. So we cut his hair. I thought it was Thursday. I show up to his place on Wednesday, you guys. And then the next day, and I didn't even realize I made a mistake yet. And this guy didn't realize I made a mistake either. We just did his hair. And then I had another guy who I was going to go do his haircut. And so I get to his house on the time that we're supposed to show up. Or no, I actually texted him. I said, hey, man, I'm on my way to your house right now. And he says, I'm still in such and such area. I completely forgot. And so I meet him at his home. We cut his hair. Neither one of us had realized that I showed up on the wrong day. So it was funny because I'm like, man, all of us, it seems like a bunch of people are kind of messed up with what day it is anymore, because the majority of people aren't going to a place that they call work right now. And if there are people that are still working, most people are working from home. Although, of course, there's exceptions with people that work at grocery stores and such. Well, anyway, so I just wanted to let you know, today is April 28th. I cheated by looking at my phone to see what day it is so I can say it on here, because I can't even remember anymore. And but I'm staying okay, you guys. The Lord's been taking care of me. I am sustained. He's been taking care of me by providing me business, and there's been a lot of people that have also donated to me or given me gifts, financial gifts, which has helped so much. And I was reading this morning, I read the whole book of 1 Thessalonians. I started last night and I read all of it the rest of it today, and then I started in 2 Thessalonians. I just opened up and started reading. I'm also reading the whole book of Acts, and then I'm also reading Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John right now. I want to read a lot about healing, so that not only can I live in divine healing, where if I need healing myself, I'm going to believe for it because it's already mine, but I want to have that believing for it, right? I have the faith for it, but sometimes it's that unbelief that can get in the way, right? And unbelief is actually ties into faith, honestly, because the word for faith is pistis, and the word for believe is pisteuo. I think that's how you pronounce it. Pisteuo. So they're very similar. Pistis is when you combine trusting and believing. That's what faith is. It's the combined Greek words of trust and faith, and you get pistis. Pisteuo is when you combine faith and trust. Now you got pisteuo, which is believe. Do you understand that? So when you unbelieve, what you do is you're undoing your trust and faith. You still have trust and faith, you're just undoing it, right? Unbelieving. So I have the trust, I have the faith, but sometimes it's where you shrink back in it. You know, you are lacking a bit, right? That's why when there was a boy, well, I don't know how old he was, but a young guy that was, they said that he keeps throwing his body, he's got a spirit in him, and it throws him in the fire and throws him in the water, and he's foaming at the mouth and all that, and some people call that epileptic seizures and everything, but you know, it was talking about how the guy had an evil spirit in him. And the disciples of Jesus, they couldn't get rid of it. And if you really look at the account closely, I can't remember the chapters, but there's two accounts, two different accounts of it in the Gospels, and I'm trying to go by memory right now. I know one of them's in Mark, and I can't remember if the other one was in John or Matthew. But anyway, talking about this boy that is throwing himself in the fire and the water, you know, foaming at the mouth. And some people think that it was epilepsy and all that, but it was called a spirit, and they couldn't get rid of the spirit, right? And Jesus says, this kind, first he says to the guy, the father, if you believe, everything's possible. And this guy says, Lord, I do believe. Help me with my unbelief. Right? I do believe. Help me with my unbelief. And I think that word for unbelief is something like apathia, something like that. And it's actually like this small, it means small faith. Right? And then Jesus says, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could tell that mountain to move, right? But apistia, I remember it has pistis in it. The word pistis, which comes from faith, but it also has pisteu in it as well, which is believe. So the translators translate it unbelief, you know, help me with my unbelief. So the man has believing, he has faith, but it's that unbelieving at the same time as believing that gets in the way. Do you understand this? Am I making sense that you can believe and unbelieve at the same time? I've heard others talk about this before too. It's actually true. I believe, but I also have unbelief. I have faith, right? But sometimes it shrinks. It's it seems to be just a tiny bit of faith. And Jesus didn't say it's really the faith. He says, because all you need is a mustard seed, which is a tiny amount of faith. That's all it takes. But it's that believing, right? It's that believing that will cause you to cast that mountain from uprooted into the ocean, right? And when he was talking about it's this kind takes prayer and fasting, he said. When these guys said they couldn't cure this kid, they couldn't get rid of that spirit. What's the problem? This kind can only be removed by prayer and fasting. And a lot of people think it means it's a really powerful spirit. That's hard to, that kind of powerful spirit is hard to get rid of unless you do prayer and fasting. But honestly, when you look at the context, it seems to be more that Jesus is actually talking about it's this kind of unbelieving. This kind of unbelief. The only way to deal with that is through prayer and fasting. And it's like, when you think about it, it makes sense, because when you fast, fasting can be done in so many different ways, you guys. I think of fasting in such a different way than just denying your flesh of food, right? When you deny your flesh of food, fasting can also be fasting from things that you really, really like, let's say alcohol. A lot of people right now are daily drinking. In fact, the trash guys, the guys that empty the dumpsters where I live, the trash men, they came by the other morning, and when they dumped the trash, all you could hear was glass bottles, boom, boom, one after another, a bunch of bottles. Alcohol sales have gone sky high ever since this thing with the coronavirus has happened, right? So let's say alcohol is something that you're daily doing. Well, you can fast from alcohol. You can fast from, if you're a marijuana user, you can fast from marijuana. If you are, foods too, you can fast from foods. You can deny the food that you feed your mind as well. Do you understand that? So maybe fasting from certain things that you've been filling your mind with on YouTube or on TV, those are hard things to give up. And it's not that you're making God happy, saying, look at the sacrifice I'm making. I'm not watching this, or I'm not eating this. No, you guys, this is to help you come out of carnality. Because carnality is your mind, fleshly type of thinking, the cravings, right? Your mind is attached to it. It's not just bodily stuff, it's in your mind as well, that craving, that desire. So when you're fasting, it's not like you're trying to prove to God something, or you're going to make him happier by starving yourself or anything like that. No, it's actually for yourself, so you can get out of flesh and into spirit more. I'm going to deny flesh, I'm going to deny all these desires and get into spirit, right? So maybe that's what Jesus was talking about, this kind of unbelief. This kind is dealt with by prayer and fasting. And when I pray, man, I like to pray in the spirit myself, because that even helps me. Even though praying, I'm not saying praying's fleshly, but when I pray in the spirit, I'm completely trusting that the spirit knows exactly what to say, because I'm speaking from the language that I have from my spirit within me. It's my spirit that's joined to the Lord's spirit, gave me a unique language to pray in, and so I do it. And that's a good way also to shut off your mind, right? Even though sometimes your mind wants to get involved and try to maybe interpret or translate. Listen, sometimes it's not about figuring it out in your mind. Sometimes the interpretation of it just comes out through maybe something that you speak later that day, or something that the Spirit shares with you, right? I've prayed in the Spirit before and actually seen certain things, words go across my mind, right? Where I see clearly words. Like last year, 2019, I was praying in the Spirit and asking for revelation. I asked the Lord first for revelation about the year 2019, and I saw the word countdown go across my mind as a theme for that year. So I went into the countdown, and what are we counting down? he took me to the book of Psalm 119. So we counted down Psalm 119. We started at the end of Psalm 119 and moved to the beginning. So it was pretty interesting and fun, and I didn't know what it was a countdown to, but it seems to be, it was a countdown to God preparing us to rely on His strength, because something was coming up in the year 2020, and now we're relying on the Lord for our strength during this coronavirus thing, right? And that's the thing that I was reading in 1 Thessalonians this morning, chapter 5, verse 18. Paul says to the Thessalonians, he says, in all things give thanks. In all things. And when you look up that Greek word for in, it means in. It's en. It's spelled in. So in. It doesn't say for all things give thanks. He didn't say give thanks for all things. He says in all things give thanks. Like, no matter where you're at in life, no matter what the situation may be, don't give thanks for it, but in it. You're in it, just like the storm. When the disciples, they were in the storm. They don't have to give thanks for the storm, but in the storm, they can still give thanks to the Lord, right? And that word give thanks is actually, it comes from a word that people use for the bread and the wine that represents the body and blood of Jesus Christ. People call it the Eucharist. The Eucharist. Give thanks is EUCHARISTEO. EUCHARISTEO. And what EUCHARISTEO means, it has the word charis in it. EUCHARISTEO. Do you see the charis sandwiched in that word? Right in the center? Charis, which is grace. So EUCHARISTEO means giving thanks for God's good grace, right? It's giving thanks or having gratitude for God's good grace, thankful for God's good grace, joyful for God's good grace. So now if you think about it differently, in all things, when you give praise or give thanks, thanksgiving you can call it, what is it? It's glad, joyful, or giving thanks for God's good grace. Now, in everything, when you live in His grace, you guys, and when you know how immeasurable grace is, how unlimited His grace is, how overflowing and abounding His grace is, let me tell you, in all things, you can still cherish, be glad, and give Him praise for His grace. Like right now, in this whole thing with Corona and all that, I don't have a job, right? Technically speaking. So in my carnal thinking, right, which is very tied into my emotions, I can really start to worry. I can start to have doubt. I can even start to have unbelief, right? Unbelief we were talking about earlier. These things could happen. And if they've happened, you know, I'm sure they have. But the one thing that I can depend on and I can give thanks for is, even if I do have any doubts, or even if my faith is wavering, or even if I question, do I really believe that God's going to carry me through this thing, and not only are my needs going to be taken care of, but I'm going to be bulletproof through this thing too, because I'm looking for not only divine healing, which I was talking about earlier, healing, but I want to live in His divine health. Healing is when you are experiencing being healed. Healing, it's a process. Healed with a D at the end means it's now done, right? You are healed. Divine health, though, divine health, that's where I don't need to be healed from anything. I don't need to experience healing because I live in divine health. And I do believe that we can live in divine health. I'm not saying you will be immortal, that you'll never die. We will put on immortality someday, but I am saying that you can believe for divine health, you guys. And that's where that scripture from Isaiah 54:17 you can grab hold of and be assured, but believe it, you guys, believe it, right? Trust it, put your faith in, and believe that his word says there's no weapon that is formed against you that can conquer you. Yes, weapons will be formed against you, but they will not conquer you. Do you understand that? So don't be thankful for the weapons that are formed against you, but when you're in a place where weapons are being formed against you, can you still give thanks to the Lord? Can you still be thankful for his grace? God's amazing good grace. Can you give him praise through all that? In the middle of weapons being formed against you? You don't have to be grateful for the weapons, but in all things, do you understand? In all things, give thanks. In all things, meaning in the midst of it. Even though you're in the midst of it, even though you're in the midst of this corona thing, can you actually give him thanks or be glad for his good grace? Sure you can. And it's actually an amazing time to be glad for his good grace. See, that's why grace isn't, people think grace is just, people that have an excuse to, you want an excuse to sin and all that stuff. It's no, you guys. Grace is so much more than what so many preachers believe it for. Grace says this, that I don't have to worry, did I do something to offend God? Is there something that I'm not forgiven about that's maybe going to leave an opening for the enemy to come in and attack me and to defeat me? Did I do something that I forgot to confess to God and I didn't repent enough about and all that? Is there something in my life that I'm not thinking of or doing on or that's going to cause God to say, you know what? Now you're on your own. I'm not going to take care of your financial needs. I'm not going to support you. I'm not going to be your help. You've blown it. See, his amazing grace keeps me in a place where I don't have to think about that. I don't have to think that way. Oh, did you got kind of like last night you sat, you watched a movie and you drank a bunch of alcohol and then you woke up the next day feeling terrible, maybe ashamed of yourself, maybe you feeling guilty, maybe you hadn't drinking in a long time, or maybe you were saying, you know what, Lord, I'm tired of drinking. Tomorrow I'm not doing it, but then you did do it anyway, right? Now, am I encouraging this? No. But what I am saying is, even in the midst of that, if that has happened to you or anything like it, his grace, which is superabounding, which in Romans 5:20 says, even when sin increases or abounds in your life, his grace does something called super or hyper abounding. Hooper parisio, it's called. Hooper, which is super, parisio, abounding, charis, which is grace. See, here's 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. In everything, right? In everything. So right now, whatever circumstance you're in, maybe you're at home and maybe you have roommates you live with, like myself. And then let's say you go somewhere like I did, Arizona. And maybe you're like me, and when you go to somewhere where there's different weather, like Arizona than San Diego, I live close to the ocean here, and it's good for my breathing. I go to somewhere like Arizona, I start sneezing for some reason, like the allergies, something out there may cause me to sneeze. Where I grew up as a child, East County, San Diego, made me sneeze all the time. I live by the ocean, I breathe fine. So, but let's say you've got roommates like I do, and then you go to Arizona and you come home and you walk in there and everybody's on this whole social distancing thing and being careful and all that, and then you go in the house sneezing today. And you know what? I bet you a lot of people are experiencing this right now. Fear to even have a sniffle. Fear to even sneeze. I mean, sometimes dust just gets in your nose and it makes you sneeze. And somebody hears you sneeze, they're going to be freaking out. You go to the grocery store, even if you're wearing a mask and you sneeze at the grocery store, people are going to be looking at you and you're going to feel like an outcast, right? Now, we're going through some times. Even in the midst of that, I'm not saying be thankful for people looking at you all worried, but in everything. Do you understand? In, this word en, it means in. It does not mean for. In everything, give thanks. And like I said, give thanks is EUCHARISTEO. EUCHARISTEO. Charis. Do you see charis right in the center of that? It means thankful for God's good grace. Can you be thankful for God's good grace? You bet you can. That was my roommate, by the way. I was parking so that I could empty my car. I have a big bag with my hair stuff in it, and I've got a couple other things. And since I park far away from where I live, I was just gonna go empty my stuff, but my roommate just got home. She puts her car in the garage. Kevin and Judy, my two roommates, are wonderful people, and we've all been a blessing to each other during these times. We're thankful to have each other, and none of us have freaked out on each other about any of this stuff. See, in all things, you guys, you can be grateful and thankful for God's good grace. It is awesome to live in this grace, and grace is not just an excuse or a license to sin or anything like that, but what grace says is, you know what? No matter what, I'm a rebellious son, I'm a disobedient brat, I'm this, I'm that, I failed in my flesh and all that. Listen, I can still give thanks for His grace because His grace has got me covered. Do you understand that? I will always have His favor, and so will you, no matter what. But you have to live in this grace, and don't let anybody or anything convince you that this gospel of grace is false. Because if they do, my friends, you'll be living in fear and worry and shame and guilt and condemnation. All these things will creep in. And what that does is it says, I trust the word of man over the word of the Lord, right? And all your armor, you just say, I'm unprotected. It's like dropping the armor that God has already given you. So hold that armor high and know that He is for you. He's not against you. He is with you through this. Believe it, you guys. Believe it, trust in it. Put your faith in Him and be just giving Him thanks and praise for His awesome, amazing grace, even in the midst of all of what's going on today. I hope this has blessed you. I love you guys. We'll see you in the next video.